Hello everyone, my name is Eddie. I'm here to do my first set of board game reviews, live board game reviews here on Twitch. And today I have the game Clank. It's a game for 2 to 4 players by, let me see his name here, Paul Denon, and published by Renegade Games. So today I'm going to be going over how to play the game, how to get it set up. I'll be showing you all of that, and giving my thoughts on how the game plays, the positives and negatives of the game. And if you have any questions, go ahead and make sure to type them into the comments, and I can answer any questions about how the game plays or why I feel a certain way about the game. For now, let's get to the board and see how the game actually sets up and plays. So Clank, as I said, is a game for 2 to 4 players. And it is a deck building game with a dungeon crawling aspect. And everything, they can hear me hear me all right? All right, good. This is the board for Clank. In this game, you are adventurers. You start off here at the top of the board, and you are trying to get into this dungeon, grab treasures, and make your way back out. And the way that you do that is with a deck building element. So each player is going to have a deck of cards to start off with, and here is that deck of cards. You have a burgle card. Let me see if I can show you that one here. You have several of these. Burgle is going to give you skill. This blue diamond here, whenever you see that, is skill, and that is going to be essentially money that you can use to buy other cards. You start with 6 of those. You also have a couple of stumbles. In this game, because you're thieves going into this dungeon, you're trying not to make a lot of noise, because if you make noise, then you wake up the dragon. So whenever you see cards that give you Clank, that is basically that you're making noise on and you have to. Let me try to focus that a little bit. You're making noise and you're risking waking the dragon. Okay, so you have a couple of those. You also have a sidestep, which doesn't give you any money or Clank, but gives you 1 boot, and that boot is used for movement. And you have a scramble, which is a $1, 1 skill, and a movement. Okay, so these are the cards that everyone's going to start with at the beginning of the game. We're going to be basically setting it up here as a 4-player game. So we'd have 4 decks of these cards set out here for the different players. Alright, and you would shuffle these up, you would draw 5 cards, and then you would do your turn. So what you can do on a turn, you actually have to play all of your cards in this game. That's one of the reasons these stumbles and all these cards with Clank on them, if you play them on your turn, you basically have to play them, and they give you that Clank to start off with. Another thing we'll do is we have to decide who the first player is. The first player would add some Clank to the board, and other players would have to start with some Clank on the board as well. Okay. There are going to be, as in any deck building game, you're buying more cards for your deck. There are some cards that start out there, that are always there. There is a goblin, who just gives you a coin when you defeat him. And down here in the corner you can see that he takes 2 swords to defeat. So enemies you don't need skill for, you actually need swords to defeat them. You also have a stack of these secret tomes. Secret tomes here cost 7 here in the bottom right, and at the top right you can see the green number there is points. So this doesn't do anything for you during the game. All it really does is clog up your deck, but it'll get you 7 points at the end. There's a stack of those. There are a stack of mercenary cards. These also are always available. They cost you 2 at the bottom right, and they give you, every time you draw them, a skill and 2 swords. So you can use those to kill the goblin or any other creatures. And the last of the cards that's always out there is the Explorer. And this one costs 3, gives you 2 skill, and a boot, a movement. Let me get that. There we go. Alright, so those are the 4 that are always out there. The rest of the cards that you can buy from are going to come from this big stack of cards. This is all going to be shuffled up, and then you're going to put 6 out here that can be bought from on a turn. The cards that are in here are a bunch of different kinds of things. There are just items and other helpers. There are creatures, like more monsters that you can defeat, and they all have abilities that you need. Again, you need swords to defeat them. There are also these purple cards that are devices. They do a bunch of different things depending on what they are, but the devices, the one thing about them is they don't actually go into your deck. You buy them once and then they go away. Alright, so you would put 6 of these cards out here. The rest of this deck would be shuffled up. There is the dragon, who is essentially one of your timers for the game. And depending on the number of players, they'll start on this dragon track differently. So for 4 players, she would start here. There are different tokens that are going to go into the dungeon, and these are essentially the things that you're trying to find. The big one is artifacts. They are these hexagon tiles here, and there's a bunch of different ones. They have different things on them, but essentially they're just points. Anywhere from 5, 15, 20, all the way up to, I believe, 30 points is the biggest one, the one worth the most. And these actually have spots on the board printed where they go. So you would put all of these onto the board in their printed positions. And one of the things about the game is that you have to have one of these in order to win. If you don't have an artifact, then you won't actually score anything at the end of the game. So even the one that's only 5, the ring up there, it's easier to get, it's closer to the top. So you might go for that one just because, well, now at least you have an artifact, so at least there's a chance that you'll win at the end, but it might not give you enough points to beat somebody who went all the way down here. There are major secrets. That is these circular tokens here. There are potions in here, like potions that heal your health. There's some chalices that are just worth points. Money. There are cards that let you, get more cards. There's a couple of ones in here that give you skill, so you can buy more cards on your turn. And these are going to go out on the board again in their places. They're mixed up and then put out here on the board. And there are also minor secrets. And the minor secrets are kind of like those major secrets, they're just not as good. Like they give you less money, or the skill ones give you less skill. These are randomly going to get put on the board on these spaces, and there's 2 of them actually on each of those spaces. There is also, in the middle of the board, you can see there's 4 spaces on this side of the board. That is the market. Right? And the market, if you stop in any of those spaces on your turn, then you can buy from the market. And there's only 3 different things you can buy from the market. There are crowns. The first one you buy, the first time somebody buys one, it is 10 points. The second time someone buys one, it's 9, and then 8. So they are only points. That's really all they're for. There is a backpack. There are 2 of these, and when you buy this, as I said, you can only have, I actually don't know if I said this, you have to have at least 1 artifact to get out of the dungeon and to win, and you can only have 1. So that 5 ring up there is tempting because it's so close, but that's the only artifact you can have, so you need to make up your points somewhere else, or try to escape as quickly as possible. The backpack allows you to have a second artifact. So with this, you could maybe get 2 of the lower level artifacts and still have a chance of winning. And the last thing you can buy at the shop would be a key. There's 2 of those in the game, and I'll go over what they do in a second. Everything in the market costs 7, so you would just stop there, you'd spend 7 gold, and you get gold from different cards, abilities, or defeating different monsters. And that is really what the gold's used for, is just for buying those things in the market. Alright, so when you're going around the board, so the way the actual turn works, so that was set up. It doesn't take too long, as you can see. There's not a ton to do, and you could really split this up and just say, hey, you mix these up and put them on all the spaces that are marked for them. The board is pretty clear about where everything goes, so it's fairly simple to split up the work that way. Alright. Let me put a couple more Clank here as well to show what that would look like. So the way that you win this game is by going into the dungeon, grabbing at least 1 artifact, and getting out. As long as you do that, you'll count your score. Your score will be any cards you have in your deck that have that green number in the top right are points. Artifacts and items that you've gotten that have that green point number on them, those are points. Every gold you have at the end of the game is straight up 1 point. So every gold that you have is 1 for 1 a point. When you get out, you would count your score. Also, if you can actually manage to get down here, grab an artifact, and actually escape, you would get one of these tokens. That's a mastery token. And all that does for you is 20 points. So that makes the strategy of going in and grabbing something quickly a little more palatable, because you do get a bonus 20 points just for getting out. Alright, so the way that a turn would work, so that's how you win. There are a couple of ways the game ends. One of them is if somebody gets in, if they get down here, they manage to grab something and they get back out, or if somebody dies, if they lose all of their health, then they go up here on this track. And then every turn on their turn, instead of taking their actions, they move one forward, there's a dragon attack, and then the game keeps going. If they reach the last space here, the game is over and everyone's knocked out. So there's a timer in the game, but it's based on when someone gets knocked out or when someone gets out. So you can kind of see the end of the game coming if you're paying attention to who is going where. I didn't say it earlier, but there's also a couple of spaces over here. I don't know if you can see them very well, but a couple of spaces here that have monkey idols. Those are just, they specifically have the monkey idols there. And there's a couple of cards in the deck that will actually reference them and say, you can do this, or you can do a super special thing if you have a monkey idol. They're only worth 5 points, but they make those cards better. When it's your turn, you draw 5 cards from your deck, and then you essentially have to play all of them. Again, if you have the blue skill, you can buy cards from the stacks over here. When you buy cards, they go into your discard pile. You can use swords to defeat monsters, and again, those go to your discard pile. Actually, those do not go to your discard pile. They just get removed from the game, and they give you some kind of ability. So like this one would give me three more skill to spend buying cards this turn. And you can use boots to move, and you can use any other special abilities you have. Obviously, there's some cards that maybe would let you teleport or do something different. When you use boots to move, you are moving along these white lines, and every boot is 1 space of movement. So if I had 3 boots, I could go 1, 2, and then from here, there are icons printed in between some of these spaces. If there is a boots icon, it means that it costs an extra movement to move there. So in order to go there, I would need to have 2 movement instead of the 1 I have. So I couldn't go there. I could go down here. The crystal caves there essentially end your movement for the turn. The way that the rulebook says it is you're exhausted from going through the caves, so you lose all of your boots for the rest of the turn and you can't get any more. You can teleport if you have cards that let you teleport, but essentially you're stuck there once you go into a crystal cavern. There are monster symbols. When you cross a route that has a monster symbol, you take 1 damage for each monster symbol there, unless you can spend a sword to cancel it. When you take a damage, so if I was the green player, you have these cubes over next to you for your Clank. Whenever you take a damage from something like that, you would take a cube from your supply and put it over here on your health tracker. If your health tracker ever fills up to the end, that's when you're knocked out. And the last thing on here on the spaces is a lock. You can't go through those lock spaces, the lock routes, unless you have a key. And that's that last of those market items that I talked about earlier. That's all the key does. It gives you 5 points at the end of the game, but all it really does during the game is it lets you go through those lock spaces freely. As you're going through and you're buying extra cards and you're playing your hand, eventually you'll run out of cards and you'll have none in your deck to draw. When that happens, you will shuffle your discard pile including any cards that you have bought, and make a new deck. And you'll start drawing from that. So eventually you'll start seeing all of the cards that you bought will start coming through your deck, and you'll continue to cycle through like that. Again, the goal is to get down here, to grab an artifact, and get as many points from things as you can, and get out. But the big thing that's stopping you is the dragon. At the end of every turn, if any cards from over here were bought from these 6 special cards, if any cards were bought, then new cards will come out. So let's say these 2 were bought. 2 new cards will come out at the end of my turn. And as you can see, this one here has a dragon attack on that right side. When that comes out, that means the dragon is going to attack everybody. The game comes with a bag, a felt bag here. And at the beginning of the game, this bag is going to be filled with, I believe it's about 20 black cubes. Whenever the dragon attacks, you'll take all of the cubes that are here in the Clank area, and you'll add those to the bag. You'll look at where the dragon is here, and there's 2 cubes there. So I'll shake up this bag and draw 2 cubes from it. Alright, so if I draw black cubes, I'm actually not drawing any. There you go. If I draw black cubes, nothing happens, but they get removed from the bag. So now there's less black cubes in there. If I draw cubes of a certain color, that goes over onto the damage track. And those characters were hit. So making noise, playing cards that have that Clank on it, gives you a better chance of having your cubes drawn out of this bag, because now you're putting more and more cubes in there. There is one last thing that I believe I need to talk about here, and that is, again, around the end game. So as you're going through and you're getting things, I already said that once somebody escapes or once somebody's knocked out, they start that countdown timer. But one thing is that you don't actually have to escape to be able to count your points. All you need to do is get out of the depths, out of the dungeon. As long as you end the game up here, above this ground line, then essentially the villagers can come and save you, and you'll be able to still keep all of your treasure. So you'll still count your points, and you'll still have a chance of winning. If the game ends because we reach the end of here, or if you're knocked out and you're below this line, you can't win. You don't get any points for anything you have, and you're essentially out of the game. So that is Clank. Oh, and the dragon will go up on the track here every time somebody picks up an artifact, or, and I think I had one over here, every time somebody picks up a dragon egg. Dragon eggs will increase the anger of the dragon and move it up, and as it gets higher and higher, you're drawing more cubes from the bag every time the dragon attacks. There's another side of the board that has slightly different layout of the rooms, and it has different things between. I mean, everything's the same. You still have monsters and extra movement and locks, but it's laid out differently on the other side of the board. And I believe on the other side of the board, actually, the market is set up differently. Like there's a market space here and here and here and here instead of all in the center. Alright, so that is essentially how you play Clank. At the end of the game, you count up all your coins and cards and artifacts and items you picked up, and whoever has the most is the winner. It's a fairly simple game, as you can tell. I mean, that was really all of the rules there, and that was the setup as well. It sets up fairly quickly. Again, if you can tell people, here, put these here. Everywhere you see the small circle, put 2 of these tokens. Everywhere you see, take these artifacts and then put them on the board where it's marked. For less players, not much changes. The dragon will start. The dragon will start on a different spot, and a couple of the artifacts are removed. I think for less players, you would actually remove a couple of the artifacts randomly. So it doesn't really tell you which artifacts you remove. It could be the 5 that you end up removing. It could be the 30. I really like this game, and it's gotten a lot of buzz recently. I think it's pretty well deserved. The game is easy and fairly straightforward. One thing I've heard is people comparing this to Ascension, because the way that the deck building works, you have this row of cards coming out all from the same deck. It's not like Dominion, for example, where you have 10 decks of cards that are chosen at the beginning of the game, and everyone's buying from those 10 decks. You have these 6 cards. There are a few that are always out there, but you have a random 6 cards to choose from, and that is changing as the game goes on. You're also very invested in other people's turns, because, especially as the game goes on, and you're taking damage, I really, like, if I only have 2 health left and I'm almost out of the dungeon, I really don't want people to buy cards, because it frees up spaces for new cards to come out, and it increases the chances that we have a dragon attack. That's where a lot of the tension comes into the game, as you're coming down to the end, and you're all racing to get out. I have heard, and you may have been able to tell from the explanation of the game that I just gave, there is this element of, oh, you know, why don't I just run in, grab the first thing I see, and then run out? And that would be, you know, I think that some people are thinking that would be the best way to do it, but it wouldn't be fun. But the thing is that I don't think that's always going to let you win. That's not going to be always enough to win the game. So doing that gives you a chance to win, but you're really not, unless you're playing with somebody who is really just trying to, you know, min-max their points and do as little as possible for their points, and who's kind of purposely just doing that. Unless you're trying to do something like that, it doesn't feel, as you're playing the game, if I went for that strategy, like let's say I came down here, I spent my movement, and I came down here and got this ring, and that's all I did. And then I turn around and I try to get back out. I can do that. It will take some time because there's 2 crystal caverns there that are slowing my movement. Meanwhile, other people are coming down here and they're grabbing better stuff. And yes, I'll get 20 points when I get out, and I'll put that timer on them, but that's still 4 points, or still 4 turns that they have to do their actions. So I'm basically ending the game with 25 points, if I didn't get anything else. They still have all the turns that I spent, plus 4 more, and all they have to do is get above this line. That's an important thing to remember, is not everyone has to actually escape, you just need to get above the line. So the people that are going further in, all I need to do, I mean, if I can get down here and get the 30, that's already beating that person with 25. Plus, I'm hopefully getting other things along the way, or buying more cards, because I'm in the dungeon longer. So I don't really think that that's the case. I don't think that it's always going to be, oh, well, whoever rushes in first and grabs the cheapest thing is going to win. I think that that's maybe what people think when they first start playing, but it hasn't turned out that way when I've been playing. The game itself plays pretty quickly, even with a full complement of 4 people, because the cards themselves aren't that complicated. There are a couple that maybe you have to read a little bit, or they combo, and as the game goes on, I mean, that's a good thing about deck builders, though, right, is that you can build these combos, and you can build cards that work off of each other so that you have a turn where you draw your whole deck. And that's fun. And it still doesn't take that long, because your deck, I don't think your deck ever really gets too big, which is good for this kind of game. The added tension of being on the edge of dying after a certain point of the game is exciting. I know the last time I played this, I went for a strategy where I was just trying to get as much Clank as possible. Because the cards that give you Clank, the cards that make you put cubes up here for the dragon, they're powerful cards, because they're hurting you while they're helping you. And so my idea was, I'll get a bunch of cards that give me Clank, and then there's also a couple of cards that let you get rid of Clank. So my idea was get all those bad cards, but also, as soon as those good cards come up, grab them as soon as possible. It didn't quite work out that way. I got a bunch of cards that gave me Clank, and they were really good cards. They were letting me draw 3 cards, or move extra spaces, or whatever else. But I wasn't able to get the cards that took Clank away that would have sort of helped me not get battered. But I still had a pretty good showing, because there was a little bit of luck involved. Because even though I had a bunch of my cubes in the bag, they weren't getting drawn every time. So there is that push your luck element of, it's completely possible that you put all your cubes in the bag and they don't get drawn because there's 20 black cubes in there. The other players are putting in cubes. It's completely possible that you could go that strategy and have all the reward with none of the risk. And it did come down to the very end for me. I almost got out of the dungeon, and if I had actually gotten out, I didn't actually, like, I was up here, so I didn't get stuck down here. I still got to count my points and everything, but what I really needed to do was get out of the dungeon for that extra 20 points, and then I would have, I think, either won or come very close to winning. As it was, I died a couple of spaces away from the top because of putting all that Clank into the bag, so it didn't work out for me that way, but we also had somebody in our group who was trying to go for that, get in, grab one thing, and get out strategy, because they were talking about how they thought that was the most powerful strategy. And we were playing on the other side of the board, and when you're doing that strategy, I think you have to get good stuff from these other tiles. You have to hope that some of those other tiles are getting you points or things, and they weren't for him as much. So he didn't end up winning either. I think that the actual winning strategy is probably more in the middle. But that is one thing that I am a little bit wary about with this game, is that I don't know exactly how much replayability it has at its current level. I know that there's already one expansion out, and I don't know exactly what that adds. I'm really interested in seeing it because what it does need is more cards. Playing through it, the times that I've played through it, I feel like there's probably 3... in these deck building games, there's always these, especially ones like this, there's combos that they kind of build in. Like, this certain kind of card will work with this certain other kind of card. And in this base game, there's a few of those. I think that there are enough monkey cards that I'd call that a strategy. There are cards that will, like, give you bonuses if you have those monkey idols, stuff like that. There's cards that will give you bonuses for Clank. Like, those are the cards that I was getting. So there was a card that was, like, for every Clank you get this turn, you get more money. So if I get a bunch of Clank, I'm just putting in, I can buy a huge card from over here. And that was very good, but if you can't get the card that lets you get rid of Clank, then it's hurting you as well. And then there are cards that are companions. Like, there are cards that you put in your deck that are characters, basically, like thieves or dwarves or elves or whatever. And a lot of them will have effects like, if you've played another companion this turn, get this bonus. So the very first time I played, I went with that strategy and tried to get as many companions as possible. And a lot of their bonuses are draw cards. So with a companion deck, I was able to draw my entire deck, basically, by the end of the game. So there are those combos there that are cool and interesting to use, but I don't know there's enough of them yet. And that's the one thing that I would kind of worry about, is replayability in the long term with just the base box. Like, if I played again, would I really have as much fun playing that Clank strategy again just to see if I can maximize it? And it would be fun. I would do it, but I like to try new stuff every time, for the most part. And I feel like I'm coming to the end of the new stuff I can do in this game. So there is that. I don't know that it has a ton of the replayability that it could have, but there is already one expansion, and I'm sure there's going to be more, and that would definitely help with that. Alright, we had a question. So the game length, let me see, the side of the box, they say an hour. That sounds about right, actually. When you're playing with 4 people, maybe you get up to like an hour and a half. And that's also thinking about even with new people. The new people I've played with have played deck building games before, so I wasn't having to teach them all of that. Oh, it's so crazy, you shuffle your deck. But they had played all that before. But they hadn't played this before, and still I would say we got it done in like an hour and a half. Once everyone knows it, it's very quick. The turns that you take are fairly simple because you're only really choosing from those 6 cards. As long as everyone's like reading these on other people's turns and trying to decide what they want to do beforehand. And I mean, on the plus side, if somebody does go for that, get the quick thing and get out, that's putting a timer on the end of the game. Now we only have 4 more turns and we're done. So that can make the game even a little bit shorter than that. But yeah, I'd say about 60 minutes to an hour and a half. An hour and a half would be like for your first game. Would be about a good time for that. We have a question about, have you ever tried it with 2 players, with just 2 players? I haven't played it with just 2 players. I've played it with 3 and with 4. This is one that I thought about playing with Tony, and in that case, we would probably play it 2. I think it would still work, but I don't think it would be as good. I think that 3 would probably be the best, because you still feel like you have control. You still feel like maybe this card that I really want will still be here when my turn comes around, but you still have the tension of, I have 2 more turns before mine. What if a dragon attack happens? And that's one of the coolest parts of the game, is that tension of, I have to survive until my next turn, and I'm, relying on them not to draw dragon attack cards that would possibly kill me. So 2 might be okay, because there's not a lot of direct interaction. You don't have to rely on. It's not like you're playing a lot of cards against each other. There are a few take that cards in the deck, but you're not interacting a lot. You don't even block each other really. Like, you can move through each other's spaces, so it's not like the board gets more cramped that way. And with 2 players, you take out some more of the artifacts, like I said, but the other things you leave in. So it might make the board a little too open. It might make it a little too easy to split up and not really bother each other. Whereas with 3 or 4, maybe we're both racing for that artifact, and you just happen to get it before me. So I guess it depends on what you want. Do you want the board to be a little tighter? Do you want that extra tension? Or are you just looking at it as like a sort of lighter push your luck deck building game? Because I think 2 players, it would be pretty light as far as the tension aspect of it. You'd really just be, and at that point you might even be just racing to like totally wipe out the dungeon. I haven't played it with 2, as I said, but at that point you might be racing to just kind of get as much of the stuff as possible and then get above the line. Maybe you don't even try to escape. So that was pretty much my thoughts on this. I really, really like it. I'd love to have an expansion. I want to try the one that's out there already, and I'd love to see more of the cards that they might come out with this. And I think they even said that the expansion comes with another board, another 2-sided board. And that actually changes it up nicely too. Like, I'll actually show you here. Throw everything off to the side. This is what the other side of the board looks like here. So you can see it's not too different, and it's not like a spiral or something crazy. But once you've played the game and you kind of understand what the symbols are, then you're looking at, oh wow, there's only one way back to the top. When you come through, you have to follow these arrows, and you have to come through here if you want to escape. Whereas the other side, it was a little easier. There's more monster spaces. As I was talking about earlier, the market spaces are spread out. It's not just the middle. So it just changes the layout and makes it a little more interesting for repeat plays. And actually, the one that I played where my friend was trying to do the weenie strategy of just running around up here, we played it on this side of the board, and I don't know if that contributed to him not doing as well as he thought he was going to. But I would definitely play with more expansions. As it is, though, that sounds a little harsh. Like, I wouldn't play it now. I would. I really like the game, even with what it has now. I really like the cards that are available. I just don't know if I'd play it like every game night. So I'm giving it a pretty big thumbs up. And the fact that I want more is actually a good thing here. That I like the game and the system a lot. I just want more diversity of the cards. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this one if you like that push your luck element. Don't mind the stress of it, but it's also not to take that. So I think that's a good balance there too. It's not a whole lot of me screwing you over. It's just you racing against the clock, and I like that.